Welcome to Why Stick. You pour a drink at the end of a long day. Maybe it's a glass of wine. Maybe it's a cold beer cracked open the second you walk through the door. You don't think about it, you just do it. But the real reason you reach for that drink is far stranger than habit, stranger than culture, stranger than anything an advertisement ever taught you. The urge sitting in your body right now is millions of years old. It existed before language, before fire, before your species even. So here's the question. Why does a sip of alcohol feel good at all? Your liver didn't evolve to process vodka. Nobody designed your body for cocktails, so why does this work? The answer starts on a forest floor long before there were humans standing on it. Picture your ancestors 10 million years ago. Not human yet, not even close. Small, quick, tree-dwelling primates spending their lives high in the canopy eating fruit. Fruit that's ripe. Fruit that's fresh. And fruit on the ground doesn't stay fresh for long. It rots. It ferments. Wild yeast drifts onto the sugar inside and starts breaking it down, releasing a familiar byproduct, ethanol, the exact same molecule sitting in your glass tonight. For most animals, that fermented fruit is a problem. Hard to digest. Easy to get sick from. Today you can still watch this play out in the wild. Elephants gather under marula trees waiting for the fruit to drop and ferment. Fruit bats track the smell of alcohol through the dark to find the ripest, most sugar-loaded meals in the forest. But for one branch of primates millions of years ago, something deeper changed. Something permanent. Biologist Robert Dudley calls it the Drunken Monkey Hypothesis. His theory is simple but strange. The smell of ethanol drifting through the trees was a signal. It meant ripe fruit nearby, sugar-rich and calorie-dense, exactly what a hungry primate needed to survive. Animals that could smell that signal from a distance and follow it found food faster than the animals that couldn't. Being drawn to the scent of alcohol wasn't a flaw. It was a survival skill. But smelling it is one thing, surviving it is another. In 2014, biochemist Matthew Kerrigan looked closely at the DNA of humans and our closest primate relatives and found something remarkable hiding in plain sight. Around 10 million years ago, a single mutation. That gene controls an enzyme in the gut and liver responsible for breaking down alcohol. Before the mutation, the enzyme worked slowly. After it, the enzyme worked roughly 40 times faster. 40 times faster from one tiny genetic change. That timing isn't a coincidence. It lines up almost exactly with when the ancestors of humans, chimpanzees, and gorillas began spending more time on the forest floor instead of high in the branches. Down there, fallen from. The primates who could actually process that ethanol, instead of getting sick from it, had a real advantage. More food, more energy, more chances to live long enough to pass that mutation on. So long before there were humans, long before language, fire, or tools, there was already a body quietly being built to handle alcohol. Built for a reason that had nothing to do with parties or stress relief. Built for finding dinner. That same gene mutation is sitting inside you right now, 10 million years later, still doing its job. Not every primate carries it, though. Notice that. Some monkeys still lack the efficient version of that enzyme entirely. Drop a small amount of alcohol in front of them and it can be genuinely dangerous because their bodies process it the slow, ancient way. You don't have that problem. You carry the upgrade. And every time you finish a drink without getting violently ill, you're quietly benefiting from a mutation that happened in a creature that never once stood upright. Why did this particular mutation stick around for 10 million years, through every branch of the family tree that followed it? Because the forest floor never stopped rewarding it. Generation after generation, the primates who could handle a little ethanol kept finding a little more food than the ones who couldn't. Small advantages, repeated often enough across deep time, eventually stop looking small. They start looking like destiny. Fast forward across millions of years, past the rise of Homo sapiens, past humans spreading out across the planet, and the story doesn't end there. It just changes shape. For a long time, the standard explanation for the invention of alcohol was simple. Humans figured out how to grow grain, and beer followed almost by accident. Agriculture. Easy to believe. But the deeper archaeologists dig, the less that order seems to hold up. In Rakefit Cave, in what's now northern Israel, researchers uncovered stone mortars dating back roughly 13,000 years, used by hunter-gatherers known as the Natufians. Long before farming existed anywhere in the region. The residue left inside those mortars showed clear signs of malting and brewing, wheat and barley soaked, sprouted, and deliberately fermented into something close. And this wasn't casual. It was tied directly to burial sites, used in feasts that honored the dead. That's a problem for the old story. If hunter-gatherers were already brewing something like beer thousands of years before they ever planted a single crop, then maybe the desire for alcohol didn't follow agriculture at all. Maybe, in some places, it helped cause it. It's a genuinely strange thought to sit with. What if the drive to keep drinking is part of what pushed certain human groups to start farming grain in the first place? Not for bread, for beer. Think about what that means for a moment. The textbook version of history says agriculture came first, a practical solution to feeding growing populations, and that everything else, including alcohol, was just a pleasant side effect. But the order at Reykjavik Cave runs the opposite direction. People were already gathering, already brewing, already burying their dead with fermented grain, long before anyone had committed to the brutal, backbreaking work of full-time farming. Something had to be valuable enough to justify that shift. What if it wasn't bread at all? And the pattern doesn't stop there. At the massive stone enclosures of Göbekli Tepe, in what's now Turkey, archaeologists have uncovered huge stone vats, large enough to brew alcohol in serious bulk, dating back roughly 11,000 years. No permanent houses, no clear evidence of year-round settlement. Just enormous gathering sites where hundreds of people seem to have traveled in from far away to feast together and to drink together. On the other side of the world, in Jiahu, China, biomolecular archaeologist Patrick McGovern analyzed residue stuck inside 9,000-year-old pottery jars. What he found was a fermented mixture of rice, honey, and hawthorn fruit, carefully made, not an accident of spoiled storage. One of the earliest confirmed alcoholic beverages on the planet. A deliberate, repeated creation, made again and again by people who clearly knew exactly what they were doing. 3 completely different sets of ingredients. 3 cultures with no contact with each other whatsoever, all independently arriving at the same discovery, around roughly the same stretch of human history. Why would that happen again and again, in places that had never even heard of one another? Maybe because the urge was never cultural to begin with. Maybe it was already built into the biology millions of years earlier, just quietly waiting for the technology to catch up to. And here's the part that should really sit with you for a second. By the time humans were brewing beer in stone vats and burying their dead with it, alcohol wasn't really solving a calorie problem anymore. Food wasn't the main thing it was doing for them. Something else had taken over. Drinking together, around a fire, at a feast, at a funeral, slows people down. It lowers their guard. It loosens the careful social distance that normally sits between near strangers. Researchers studying early human societies have long noted that shared intoxication shows up again and again at the center of ritual and bonding, present at funerals, at harvest celebrations, at gatherings clearly designed to pull separate families and clans into something larger than themselves. In small, scattered groups of early humans, trust wasn't a nice idea. It was survival. You needed to know exactly which strangers you could rely on, which alliances might actually hold when food ran short or danger showed up at the edge of camp. Sharing something that altered everyone's state at the same time, together, in public, may have been one of the fastest ways human groups ever found to manufacture that trust. A shortcut straight to closeness. So the same molecule that once helped a primate find ripe, rotting fruit on a forest floor may have later helped early humans build the very social bonds that let large communities exist at all. That's the twist most people never expect walking into this. The thing you reach for to unwind after a long week didn't start as an escape from anything. It started as 2 completely different survival tools, stacked on top of each other across millions of years. First, a way to find food when food was scarce. Later, a way to find connection when connection meant survival too. Look at where alcohol actually shows up in your own life, and the pattern barely changes. It's at the wedding. It's at the wake. It's at the table when 2 families meet for the first time and nobody quite knows what to say yet. It's in the office after a hard quarter when nobody wants to talk about work anymore. None of that is an accident. None of that is just. You're walking through rooms that have been built, generation after generation, around the exact same chemical your ancestors were chasing across a forest floor. Even the rituals around it have barely changed shape. A toast before a meal isn't so different from a Natufian funeral feast. A round bought for the table isn't so different from a vat of beer shared by strangers at Göbekli Tepe, 11,000 years before either of you were born. The container changes. The bottle, the glass, the label. The underlying behavior doesn't, which brings you back to tonight. That glass in your hand isn't some modern invention you're freely choosing, disconnected from everything that came before it. It's the last link in an unbroken chain stretching back past agriculture, past cities, past the very first humans, all the way to a small primate on a forest floor 10 million years ago, following a smell it couldn't have explained, toward fruit it desperately needed to survive. You didn't inherit a bad habit. You inherited a 40 times faster enzyme, built by evolution for a world that no longer exists, still quietly running inside your body in a world that does. The glass shared at the end of a long week. None of it is new. It's just the oldest habit you have, wearing a very modern disguise. So tonight, when you pour that drink, you're not doing something your culture invented. You're doing something your biology invented 10 million years before culture ever existed at all. If you want to keep understanding yourself, subscribe. And if you watched this far, what do you want to understand next?